Alright, just got my package in from Banggood today. A little concerned about the ends here, almost protruding from the plastic. Doesn't feel like anything's necessarily broken, so we'll see how that goes once we get into it. Okay, Banggood approached me a while back and said that they were starting to carry Nerf products and wanted to know if I wanted to review some things. So I went and looked at what they had, and they do carry a pretty nice variety, a lot of worker stuff and things like that. And so there are several of these items that I'd actually been considering buying from other sources, but was a little bit hesitant. I'd seen some people use them, but nobody had ever actually done an actual review to see how the kits themselves worked, and quality-wise, I trusted it was good from worker F10555 stuff. But as far as the application of the parts, I wasn't sure about. So I decided that'd be a good opportunity to not only get the parts I was looking for anyway, but also to, help out anybody else who wanted a definitive, are these parts good? What, because they're kind of peculiar, some of these, two-sided tape application things. I'm used to more mechanical bonding or chemical bonding, so the adhesive is a bit interesting, so I was kind of wary about how that would be. What we have here is a worker kit, which I believe is the 9-kilogram spring. I'll double check for sure when I'm posting the information in the description and stuff like that. This is a Longshot flat top rail, 2-piece, so it adheres directly to the shell and splits with the shell, as opposed to other options on the market that are a single piece that fit between the shells. This is a worker replacement Longshot stock that's just a little bit cleaner looking, a little sleeker, and doesn't have the support issues that the stock has. This is a shotgun style pump kit that instead of wrapping around the existing bipod piece, you trim a lot of the bipod piece off and use the tape and stick these guides in place, and it's much slimmer profile, like a lot lower profile pump kit. So we'll get these installed and then talk about the installation itself, how that went, and operation and stuff like that. Okay, just a couple quick notes before I start assembling things that I just noticed while I was kind of handling these pieces and looking at them a little more closely. And like with this stock, the top, I believe it's at the top, is just the print itself. I mean, obviously the design is good, but the print itself is very not what you'd expect from worker F10555 stuff. It's very kind of stringy and lumpy here along the top, and especially on the inside there. I don't know, I guess it's printed like that, but it's just very I don't know, a bit more messy than I really expected. Like I said, not really what to. I've dealt with some worker stuff now at this point, and I've been really impressed. But this is kind of a put-off. That's not necessarily anything on Banggood's part. It's apparently the worker stuff itself. This piece seems pretty good. This piece, the top rail, there is a bit of damage here on the corner. I'll try to get a better picture of that if it doesn't show up, because it's not wanting to focus as usual. But there is, this piece here is broken. It's still hanging on a little bit, and I'm hopefully should be able to get it pushed back into place and glue it. But that is a bummer, and that a result of the packaging done. So that's that's kind of a drag. But I have the ability to handle that, but from someone else who may not have the means that I do, that would be a rather large bummer. But also, it's very stringy. Like, the print itself is very stringy. There's lots of stray strings just kind of hanging off of stuff, and especially in here where the Picatinny is, it's just very lumpy. I mean, it's going to take a bit of sanding and stuff to get a lot of that out. And I was trying to brush out some of this kind of down here below the rail itself, and I got a sliver in my thumb of just stringy filament that was, like 1/8 of an inch long that I had to dig out. That was rather alarming. But yeah, it's the print itself is a bit disappointing. But I think the worst and weirdest one is the pump grip itself, which, for starters, just as far as the kit itself, both the grip and the guides are printed with the layers perpendicular to the direction of travel, so it's very it's got a lot of that. So I'm definitely going to be sanding this down a little bit, both sides, to get it a little smoother, so it's not quite so because I mean, geez, use this blaster and wear corduroys and that'd be a one-man band pretty much. Okay, but the weirdest part with this is just in the print itself, it's almost bubbling, and I probably won't be able to get it to show up on camera, but it was evidently printed vertically at a slight angle like that, but at the end of each turnaround, it looks like, there's just all these pock marks, like where the filament kind of blips out a little bit, but it's also on this surface here and inside the actual travel where the guide goes, which is probably kind of exacerbating the existing noise problem. But it's also even here on the outside surface, not so much on the bottom of the grip, but on pretty much every other side, especially on what would be the top of the grip, is just these really radical pock marks. I mean, just like I said, I'll try to get some decent pictures because it's just a weird anomaly, and again, not what you'd expect from worker parts. It's like I said, a little bit disappointing. I think, like I said a minute ago, I had the ability to cope with these and you know, fix it, but for somebody looking for a drop-in kit like you expect from worker stuff, I would be a bit disappointed. So that's kind of a bummer. And also my lubey stuff, I assume that's lubey stuff, apparently leaked in my box, which is kind of a bummer, but what you gonna do? So what this is? Oh, yeah, it's apparently stored on its side and leaked out. So I guess that's not a horrible thing, but it is a thing. So I'll, I guess, get back to installing things, and I will try to rectify some of these issues as I go along. Okay, the Longshot has been assembled, and I've had a chance to play with it a little bit, and just some thoughts I've had. In order to get the stock to fit, you have to grind down some of these little ridges and details on the Longshot stock, just in order to get, because the inside of the stock is smooth, or flat, I guess, but yet there's these, you know, rib here and a rib here, and there's another rib here with the locking hole, so to speak. So you have to grind all those flat with the rest of the shell in order to get the stock itself to fit. And the stock is awfully snug, which is nice, but it's almost so snug that it acts like it doesn't fit quite right, especially right here where there's a bit of a step down in the shell. The shell's kind of tall here and steps down, and the area for it in the stock seems a bit undersized, but it's not something you can just trim down easy because it's, you know, like this much of it you'd have to modify, and so it's a bit of a job to like sandwich it on there, and you're really putting a lot of faith in the 3D printed material, which to my knowledge doesn't really hold screws very well quite often. So you're putting a lot of faith in that. But once it's on there, it's solid and it's remarkably comfortable. I was a little hesitant at first because it made the stock look really long, and I usually like somewhat shorter stocks just so everything fits in a little more compact. But when you shoulder this thing, I've said it before, but it's like getting a big hug. It's just like, oh, that's nice. It just fits in your shoulder just real good, and it's just a good length on your arm. And so as far as comfort and everything, it's really nice, really nice. The unusual properties with the print on it is still a bit off-putting this way. I mean, just the way the print was set up. So I'm definitely going to be taking this back off, doing a little, maybe not so much sand work on here, but definitely on the front here, and maybe even on the back. But the back does have a nice solid pad, and it's very comfortable, very, very comfortable, which is nice. The top rail is a affixed with 3M tape, like double-sided tape, that's included on the piece. But I believe just the impressions with handling it are that the print was designed without the tape in mind, because it leaves a gap, obviously, because you have to have the tape in there, but it seems to throw off the fit to where even though I pushed back as hard as I could, this piece here, the lines don't line up exactly, and especially back here on the back, there's a large gap where the tape doesn't even make contact with the plastic at all. Zoom in a little. No, that's all the zoom we get. Yeah, you can. There you go. There you go. You can kind of see the large gap. Whereas I think if there wasn't the tape on there, if you just bonded it with something else or screwed it on or whatever, you'd be able to get this line to match up with the little priming indicator, which would be really cool. Also, I think that would help the fit up in here at the top with some of these peculiar angles. Can I focus? Yeah, some of the angles don't really fit quite right, which there again, I think removing the tape would help with those. Also, I mentioned the print quality itself when I was handling it before I installed it, but just in the course of handling it, it's just a very I don't know, there's just a lot of like actually sharp edges and a lot of strings and little snags on there and stuff. And just in the course of handling it, it was like actually very uncomfortable to handle and install. And I came back through later and actually sanded a lot of the edges a little bit, just because, like I said, they're literally like sharp. I was actually, cutting my fingers in the course of handling it and trying to move the blaster around. So it's a not, and maybe this is just bad print, maybe it was a bad batch or something. The printer was out of whack, I don't know. But I wouldn't necessarily buy this with the intention of just cutting the rail off and sticking it on there and being done. There is some finish work to be done with it. I'm going to be taking it back off, doing a little more cleaning up on it, and then attaching it chemically, and I'll probably add that in the video later on if need be, or I'll just do that in a separate one altogether. Now, moving on to the grip. Well, I guess before we get to the grip, I will say the installation of the 9 kilogram spring went pretty good, although I did not remove the AR quite yet, so I did not install the little rubber buffer in there, so I can't make any judgment on that. But the spring itself seems very sound. I'm actually liking the amount of force that the spring has. So the grip, the pump grip and everything is, like I mentioned, that I had to sand down the insides, or the mating surfaces of the priming action, because it was like just that really, really aggressive corduroy sound, which I couldn't handle. And even with the sanded down almost smooth, I'm going to go through and sand it off again. It's doable. I mean, I don't have any issues with it particularly, but there again, it's not something you want to just stick on there without any kind of prep work. This piece is also a peel and stick, just like the top rail, and just like the top rail as far as the tolerances, I think it would fit better if you didn't use the tape, because when you prime it, the priming slide crashes into the back of the guide before you really get it primed, and so you actually have to like slam it back in order to get it to catch. Otherwise, if you just kind of come, you have to pop it back pretty good in order to get it to catch. Whereas if you take the priming handle off and just use the bar, even with the better spring, it primes back no problem. But can you see the indicator there? But you pull it back, and it wants to, but if you just pull back, you actually have to snap it really good in order to get it to catch. And that's because, like I said, the grip, or the slide, is crashing into this wall. And I think the tolerances are so tight that if you eliminated the tape and just had the material glued or fastened other ways to the plastic itself, then that would give you just that little tiny bit more to give you nice reliable firing. But I've put several hundred rounds through this in the meantime, and it does have a tendency to jam up because you prime it back and it'll either prime only partially and it'll release as you're priming forward. It doesn't actually catch all the way. Or you'll prime it and it just won't catch at all, and so you're trying to double load darts and jamming and stuff like that, and that's kind of a bummer. So just like the rail, I'm going to be removing this in the future and eliminating the tape and bonding it directly, and after a little bit more finish work and trying to get things to match up a little better. Because I do think being able to pull it up a little tighter and back will go a long ways, because just looking at the alignment of the materials, I think, like I said before, it was originally intended to be glued directly to. As far as the construction, I'm really pleased with it. I do like the slimmer profile compared to other non-modifiable or non-modification necessary type priming kits. I do like the slimmer priming handle on it. The metal bars are nice and solid. I'm assuming they're aluminum, but they're, like I said, very solid. I never had any concerns about them bowing or flexing or anything like that. Putting a grip, like a horizontal a grip like I have on here. I did put this grip on for a little bit, but because of the existing issue of not being able to travel far back enough to prime, because you're putting so much more load instead of up here, you're putting load lower on it. It's hitting this part here, and I could not get it to prime at all using a vertical grip of any kind. So I did have to grab closer up at the top here, or actually pulling on the bars themselves in order to get it to catch. So I'll find out more information once I modify this a little bit further and get pulled in, if that'll fix all the issues. So basically what I've learned is with all these pieces, they were not direct drop-on kits like what we quite often see from Worker. And beyond just the quality itself of the print, just the fit is a bit unfortunate. I've actually been wanting to get these pieces for a while, but I was really disappointed. I mean, if I had purchased these pieces personally with the intent of being able to just drop them on, I would have been very disappointed. Being able to test these for this, and I value my time, I guess, and so even though these things were offered to me free of charge for review, I still had to invest an awful lot of my time into making these things work. So keep in mind, I would not recommend these as a drop-on piece. They do require finish work to make them so they're not going to cut you up or bug the heck out of you with the noise of the priming, or just to actually fit in the first place. As far as aesthetically and functionally, the pieces do look beautiful. It does do wonders for the Longshot profile. I do like that. The construction is sound. I mean, none of them feel particularly weak. I've wailed on them a little bit. The only issue is just this front piece of the top rail that was damaged during shipping. But yeah, like I said, they're good parts, but don't go into them assuming that you can just drop them on. So not a good thing, not a bad thing, just something to be aware of, which is good, which is something, like I said, I've seen these used a few times, but I've never actually seen any review information on them, and that is information that would have been valuable to me. So now I pass that information on to you, you can make your judgment accordingly. So that is my review, and if any other information regarding the modifications to these parts in a non-factory intended install will just be in a separate video. So thank you very much for watching.